So I watched this video on by ShannonQ on is religion a mental illness? And like all things Shannon, it was pretty solid. I would say pretty rock solid. The best case scenario for the arguments in the video come towards the end. And I'll go into that in a second. But the first thing I just want to predicate this with is, you know, I wasn't sure that when I looked in the live chat, I was in the live chat for a little bit, I didn't really seem to see anybody arguing the contrary, that religion is in fact a mental illness. But then when I looked around and looked at some of the comments, I noticed that there were in fact people who were saying that religion was a mental illness. Let me just say right from the outset, I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I don't buy that those people actually believe that. I don't think they're that far gone. I don't think they're that. I think it's a fake argument. And they're semi-conscious of the fact that they are ginning up an argument, not operating in good faith. In other words, if I were the practicing Christian, start my argument with atheists for all atheists are immoral douchebags. Do I honestly believe that? No. Do Christians start arguments like that? Start from a position like that? Yes. Why? For fake reasons. To artificially elevate myself in the argument. Same thing that somebody says, yeah, religious people are just mentally ill. I don't think they honestly believe that. I really don't. I think they're saying that, and they may honestly think they believe it, but I don't think that they really do. You're telling me Martin Luther King was mentally ill? Johann Sebastian Bach? At the very least, religion throughout history has been the source of, you know, enormous inspiration in the person of Johann Sebastian Bach. You think Martin Luther King was mentally ill? Seriously? The direct inspiration for his social achievement came out of the book of John. He would tell you that with his own words. Direct inspiration from religion to achieve what he achieved. Does anybody listening to me honestly think that he was mentally ill? Even some of you who might say, yeah, religion's a mental illness? No, I don't think you do. Therefore, I don't think the argument is legitimate. I think it's fake. I think it's a way of you artificially elevating yourself above your, you know, potential opponent. Just like if a Christian were to say, all atheists are immoral douchebags. There's no Christian who really honestly believes that, who's never met an atheist, who wasn't, who was a decent human being. There's no Christian on earth who's never met an atheist. I'm not talking about like apologia. I'm talking about, just kidding, like decent, I'm talking about decent human beings. There's no Christian on earth who has never met someone on Twitter who was an atheist who they weren't, okay, that guy's pretty cool, but he's an atheist. So why would a Christian start from a position of all atheists are immoral douchebags, which they do, because they are trying to artificially puff themselves up, give themselves a starting position that is higher than their opponent on purpose in the argument. Duh. Same thing with the people who are pretending that they think that religion is a mental illness. I don't buy it. I don't think they honestly think that. I can think of those two examples right off the top of my head. Martin Luther King Jr. Does anybody really honestly think that he was mentally ill? No. He would tell you with his own words, directly inspired by the book of John. Does anybody listening to this honestly think that he was mentally ill for that? No. Therefore, it's a fake argument. But let's take it on its terms. Shannon's video was still pretty rock solid. The best case scenario in her video, as I said, the best point she made came towards the end. And it's as far as I'm concerned, it's pretty much case closed, inarguable. I mean, it's a game over argument. But there are tons of people who are practicing a religious faith of any sort, even the kooky faiths. Well, Christianity is a kooky faith, Greg. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. Even the kooky faiths. Okay? And they can be dissuaded or persuaded with argumentation, with solid evidence, with anything. Maybe if you get into the root of why they believe it so passionately, you can actually change their mind. There is no such thing as somebody having a mental illness where you can actually affect them by what you say to them, change their mind on the subject. If they have a mental illness and they're schizophrenic and they think little green Martians are coming out of the cereal bowl, it doesn't matter what you say to them, you are never going to dissuade them otherwise. Well, they really aren't. Take a good look at your cereal bowl. Do you really see? Yeah, I do see little green Martians. That's how it will go down, something like that. I mean, that's the argument that she made right towards the end. As far as I'm concerned, that's case closed, game over. That's a totally, irrefutable argument. Religious people can be dissuaded out of their religious beliefs. Mental illness is organic to the brain and has nothing to do with what the person consciously believes or does not believe. It's a disease. And it functions like a disease. So a lot of the other things she said were also accurate. A religious experience is completely under the control of me, the religious person. I personally think that is one of the greatest sources of stability, peace of mind, and sanity in my own particular life. I think that's, an observable fact. When I became a Christian, there's a lot of things that I stopped doing, all of which were destructive. Stop drinking, stop smoking, stop doing drugs all the time. Partially because the religion gave me some grounding in peace of mind and a sense of stability and peace and purpose that was potentially lacking beforehand. I'm not sure if that's the exact reason, but whatever. But for you, the people who still think it is a mental illness, or you are the people who would still be inclined to argue that it's a mental illness, let me just point out something I've tried to point out in my other videos. There is the physiological experience that is a spiritual experience. That is non-negotiable. What do you mean, Craig? I mean, that is something that would happen to you if I put you in the right conditions, irrespective of what you believe or what you think you believe. It's non-negotiable. It's physiological. So it isn't an illness. It is something that, first of all, it's something I choose to participate in because I enjoy and I get something out of it. But irrespective of that, if I put any of you atheists, any atheist listening to me, for example, in my church on a Sunday morning with the 15 minutes of worship service that start off the service. Now, I've tried to point this out in my other videos. This is why I've been saying that science is on my side. Why? Because there's a science to this. This is non-negotiable. If I put you in the middle of that worship service, irrespective, you say, I don't believe in God, it wouldn't matter. If you were instructed to participate, sing along with everybody else and sing the songs that were on the screen and pretend just for the 15 minutes that you were one of us and sing along, you would experience something that you would define as spiritual. Would you say that's God? No, probably not. You can have a spiritual experience and not necessarily think that it's God. But the source of the God belief is the spiritual experience. The spiritual experience is non-negotiable. It's physiological. Has nothing to do with what belief system you bring to the table. You can be as atheist as you want to be. And if I put you in the middle of a church service that had an anointed worship service and you were instructed to worship along with everybody, you would feel something too. You'd feel some sort of peace or weird feeling. How you define it to yourself would be totally up to you. As I pointed out, my sister, I took her to church a few times. One time, she was moved to the point of tears. Is she a practicing Christian now? No. Does she believe in God now? No. I'm not sure. I've never really asked her. But I wouldn't be surprised if she answered no. So how did she define that experience to herself? I have no idea. That's my point. The experience itself is physiological. It's non-negotiable. It's something that occurs, period. And the human body responds to it. An atheist can have a spiritual experience, and matter of fact, they would have a spiritual experience given the right conditions. That's what I was trying to say. Science is on my side. This isn't anything that somebody shouldn't clearly know. Even if you said religion is a mental illness and I put you right smack dab in the middle of a church service with a powerful anointed worship service, you were instructed. How an atheist avoids it is just doesn't participate. They either don't go to that service, or if the worship is starting, they don't participate. If you were instructed to participate, you would feel something in the room. You would have a small form of a spiritual experience. It's non-negotiable. It's physiological. Just as if you can have whatever opinion you want about marijuana, for example. Oh, I don't believe in marijuana. I think it's evil. I don't believe marijuana works. Doesn't matter what your opinion is. If I put a joint in your mouth and I fire it up, your response to the drug of THC, physiological. Irrespective of what you believe or what you think you believe about marijuana. It doesn't make one iota of a difference. Spiritual experiences are the same thing. They are the same thing. This is why no less of a committed atheist than Objectively Dan was telling a story. This is what I try to point out in some of my last videos. And I'll try to clarify this further. But it's a physiological response. It's not an idea response. It's not a belief response. It's a physiological response. Yes, ultimately I derive my belief that God exists from the spiritual experience. But the actual spiritual experience itself doesn't have anything to do with the belief. So, for example, no less of a committed atheist than Objectively Dan was talking about the time where he was starting to deconvert from Christianity, and he started, hanging out with these Hare Krishnas. And he went and he did some of their rituals and their meditations and their chants. And guess what? He started having an experience with them. Did he become a Hare Krishna? No. Why? Because he didn't believe their beliefs underlying it. But the experience itself is physiological. Period. You don't have to believe anything to have the physiological response in a worship service. It's physiological. It's non-negotiable. It's not something you choose to not have. If you are instructed to participate, you will have the experience too, to some small degree. Yes, how you define it is up to you. Yeah, I don't think any atheist is going to be in the worship service and go, oh, I totally believe it's God, Craig, hallelujah. Cool. Give me your tithes. Give me your tithes. Cut to the chase. Give me the tithes. But the actual experience itself, non-negotiable. For example, okay, I'll give you another example to clarify what I mean. Once upon a time, before I became a Christian, I was in a theater camp in high school. And we used to do these, in theater camp, they used to do these weird type of New Age exercises. And one of the ones we did was a form of meditation exercise where everybody lied with their head together in a circle, and somebody would start making a noise like, oh, and you were instructed to take the noise that the person next to you was making and let it influence your noise, and you were instructed to make a noise along with them in unison. So you start going, oh, and then all of a sudden, everyone in the circle, our heads are together in a circle, are making the same noise in unison together, and the noise is taking on a life of its own. It's changing according to whatever. It's being shaped by the crowd. And it's a really, really powerful, weird, and intense feeling. And it feels really spiritual somehow. Because you're all in concert making this noise, and the noise is forming of itself, and it's taking off of its own accord, and it's very hard to explain. But it's a really, really intense experience. It doesn't matter what you believe. Doesn't matter if you're a practicing atheist, doesn't matter if you're a Buddhist, doesn't matter if you're a fundamentalist Christian. If you lie down in that circle and you played along and you were instructed to make the noise and you made the noise, you would feel some sort of really weird, powerful experience. Full stop. Why? It's physiological. Physiological. How you define that experience would be entirely up to you. But the actual experience itself, which I'm saying was kind of sort of vaguely spiritual, you would feel, you would experience. And it would weird you out and mess with you. Similar idea, you go to a church, the worship music starts. How you would avoid having a spiritual experience? Not play along, not participate. But if you were instructed to, you have to sing along with everybody else, you would feel some variation of what they are all feeling. Why? It's physiological response to the conditions of the environment. It's not negotiable. You would. Would you define it as God? No, probably not if you're a practicing atheist. But you would feel some of what they're feeling. A little bit more peaceful, a little bit more in harmony with the music. It's a physiological response. The music starts to get inside of you, and you're singing the songs, and you're singing in harmony with everybody else, and it starts to transform your experience. Physiologically, irrespective of what you think you believe or what you actually believe, doesn't matter. And if you're one of these people who think, but religion is a mental illness, I put you right smack dab in the middle of that experience, and you were instructed you have to sing along with everybody else, you'd feel it too to some small degree. Are you now mentally ill? No. No, you're not. So, I mean, it's a solid video, Shannon's video on the subject. I think that clarifies it how I just said it. The other thing that I really think that, not sure if she quite touched on, but I think they're full of garbage. The people who are pretending to argue that they think religion is a mental illness. I don't think they honestly believe that. Ask any of them if they actually think Martin Luther King was insane or mentally ill in any way, shape, or form. So that's only one example. There's tons of examples throughout history where religion itself has been a direct inspiration on behavior that all of us would agree is really, really, really healthy, positive, life-affirming, self-effacing and life-affirming in a religious way. Tons of examples. That's just the one that popped into my head. So I don't buy it. I think they're trying to win arguments in ways that are false. I think they're trying to enter into debates automatically elevating themselves and puffed up so they can look down on other people and get away with it. I don't think they honestly think that religion is a mental illness. Yes, there's such a thing as pathological people who happen to have it tied very strongly to the religion. That exists. But if you've ever noticed how the world actually operates, that exists with every ideology under the sun. There are crazy right-wingers, there are crazy left-wingers, there are crazy socialists, there are crazy capitalists. What you marry your specific form of rabid dogmatic insanity to doesn't seem to have any correlation between what the underlying beliefs actually are. But I'll go into that in other videos. That's for another time. It's not for this time. But, so, I say check out Shannon's video. Rock solid, as I said. Typical Shannon, pretty much rock solid all the way through and well argued. And the strongest point is the one that, as far as I can see, is irrefutable. You can, if you think I, Craig, am crazy because of my religious beliefs, guess what? I'll listen. You can rationally talk to me and maybe get me to not think some of the things I think. Do you honestly think Jesus is, I don't know what you think. I think that's crazy, but whatever. I'll listen to you. And I can be dissuaded one way or the other. I can't be talked out of a mental illness. I can't be reasoned out of my mental illness. That's what makes it an illness. It's not just that it's delusion in the sense of like, is religion is something that you have to play guessing games at. Is Craig deluded because he thinks Jesus is God? That's kind of a guessing game. Maybe I'm right, maybe you're right. But if I have a mental illness, there's no guessing game. I see little green Martians in the I don't know where I see them. I see them in the kitchen and they ain't there. There's nothing you can say to me to rationally talk me out of it, to get me to not perceive my delusions. It's not just that they aren't tethered to reality. They bear no relationship to reality at all. That's what makes them delusions. Christianity, if you think it's a delusion, you can think that we're wrong and we're mistaken. But our delusion, quote unquote, matches very strongly with the reality of the world we live in. There's a strong possibility that there is a God. If you don't think that there is, think more clearly. But even if there isn't, there's churches in every, town in the United States. And people who believe our beliefs all over the place. It's not an argument ad populum. It's a normal part of life. So, anywho, that is all for now, kids. The mass is ended. Go in peace. Amen.